It was a warm Saturday afternoon when Judge Rena Washington drove her old silver Honda Civic down Highway 78. No government car, no security escorts, just a woman on her way to her niece's wedding. The road was peaceful, lined with trees swaying under the Alabama sun. She smiled, thinking about the vows, the laughter, and the family waiting for her. But destiny had other plans. Before we begin this story, if you believe that truth and justice always find their way, take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel, because this story will remind you why standing for what's right still matters. As Rena approached the small town of Fairfield, she saw flashing red and blue lights ahead. A police checkpoint. She slowed down, took a deep breath, and prepared to cooperate, not knowing her life was about to change forever. 3 officers stood by the roadside, their hands resting on their belts, watching each car like hunters waiting for prey. At the center was Sergeant Devin Mitchell, a man whose authority had long been twisted into arrogance. He raised his hand sharply, signaling Rena to stop. She pulled over calmly, lowered her window, and greeted him with quiet respect. "Good afternoon, officer," she said. But Mitchell's voice was cold. "Where are you headed, ma'am?" "To my niece's wedding," she replied softly. He scanned her from head to toe, his eyes filled with disdain. A black woman, alone, in an ordinary car. That was all he saw. Not a federal judge, not a woman of integrity, just someone to humiliate. He smirked. "Ah, going to eat and drink at a wedding, huh? Well, seems you were speeding through my town, and I don't see that seatbelt properly fastened. That's a fine right there." Rena's calmness remained. "Officer, I wasn't speeding, and my seatbelt was on." Mitchell chuckled darkly. "Don't teach me the law, ma'am. Around here, I decide what's legal." She could already sense what was coming. Sergeant Mitchell leaned closer to the window, his tone dripping with contempt. "You people never learn respect," he muttered. He motioned to one of his subordinates. "Let's give her a real lesson." The younger officer hesitated. "Sir, she—" "Do it," Mitchell snapped. Rena felt her pulse quicken, but she didn't move. She knew what this was. A power game. Mitchell yanked open her car door and grabbed her arm roughly. "Get out!" he barked. Her face tensed with pain, but her eyes stayed calm, unbroken. Every move, every insult was a test of how far they would go. "Still silent?" Mitchell scoffed. "You think your silence makes you strong." Rena looked him straight in the eye and said quietly, "Strength doesn't come from shouting, officer." That single sentence cut through the air like lightning. Mitchell's jaw tightened. He turned to his men. "Take her in. We'll deal with her at the station." As they shoved her toward the patrol car, Rena whispered to herself, "Let them reveal who they truly are." The patrol car door slammed shut behind her, echoing like a gavel of injustice. Rena sat in the back seat, wrists sore, breathing slowly, refusing to speak. She could have revealed her identity with a single sentence. "I am Judge Rena Washington." But no, she chose silence. Sometimes silence speaks louder than power. At the station, Sergeant Mitchell strutted through the hallway like a king in his kingdom of fear. He slammed a folder on the desk and barked, "Charge her. Speeding, no seatbelt, resisting arrest, add whatever fits." The other officers exchanged uneasy glances. "Sir, do we have proof?" one whispered. Mitchell smirked. "In this station, we don't bring proof, we make it." Rena heard every word. Still, she didn't speak. In the corner of the room, A clock ticked. Each second felt heavier, slower, like time itself was watching injustice unfold. Her silence wasn't fear. It was strategy. She wanted their corruption to expose itself completely before she lifted the veil. Mitchell's anger grew as Raina refused to break. "Still not talking," he barked. He slammed his fist on the metal table, the sound echoing across the small room. "Who do you think you are?" he yelled. "You come into my town acting like you're above the law?" Raina met his glare but said nothing. Her silence infuriated him. He gestured to his deputy. "Lock her up. Maybe a night in the cell will humble her." As they dragged her down the corridor, another officer muttered nervously, "Sir, she doesn't seem like the others we bring in." Mitchell cut him off sharply. "She's no different. Just another mouth that needs shutting." The cell door clanged shut. Raina sat quietly in the dim light, her mind steady, her dignity untouched. Another woman in the cell asked softly, "What did they do to you, sister?" Raina smiled faintly. "Nothing that truth won't undo." Outside, Mitchell filled out a false report, confident that no one would question his word. But he had no idea that the woman he just imprisoned held the power to destroy everything he stood for. The hours crawled by. The station buzzed with routine chatter, papers shuffling, phones ringing. Yet beneath it all lay a dark current of fear and corruption. Sergeant Mitchell walked past the cells with a cruel smirk. "Learned your lesson yet?" he mocked. Raina lifted her eyes slowly, her voice calm but firm. "I've learned that power without justice is just violence with a badge." That sentence froze the room. Even his subordinates looked uneasy. Mitchell slammed his baton against the bars. "Careful with that tone, lady. You don't know who you're dealing with." But oh, how wrong he was. She sat back down, her hands folded, observing every detail. The graffiti on the wall, the crooked nameplate on the sergeant's chest, the false authority dripping from his every word. Somewhere deep inside, she knew this was not coincidence. She was meant to see this corruption firsthand, to expose it from within. And soon, their entire system would collapse under the weight of their own arrogance. Morning light crept through the dusty windows of the station. Mitchell sat at his desk, spinning his pen with smug satisfaction. His deputy entered quietly, holding the forged report. "All done, sir," he said nervously. "Good," Mitchell replied. "File it. She'll stay here until she learns to respect authority." But the deputy hesitated. "Sir, she doesn't seem like a regular citizen. There's something about her calm." "Composed," Mitchell interrupted, laughing. "Calm. That's arrogance. They all act innocent until they cry for mercy." Across the hall, Raina sat silently in her cell, watching it all unfold. She could feel the weight of the injustice pressing against the walls, not just toward her, but toward countless others who had suffered the same fate. She whispered softly to herself, "How many have you done this to, Sergeant?" Her words weren't heard, but the truth of them echoed through the room like a quiet prophecy. By sundown, that same arrogance that fueled Mitchell's cruelty would become the spark of his downfall. The cell was dim and cold, its air thick with despair. Two other women sat quietly beside Raina, victims of the same broken system. One of them, eyes tired and swollen, asked softly, "What did you do, sister?" Raina smiled faintly. "I didn't do anything. That's what frightens them the most." For the first time, the women around her lifted their heads. There was something different about this woman. Her stillness carried authority. Her silence felt powerful. She closed her eyes and prayed quietly. Lord, let truth rise where fear has reigned. In another room, Mitchell poured himself coffee, laughing with his men. By morning, she'll beg to confess to anything, he bragged. But destiny was already on its way. Because while Mitchell enjoyed his false sense of control, help was coming, and with it, judgment. The sound of engines outside interrupted his laughter. He looked out the window and frowned. A convoy of black SUVs was pulling up to the station, and the moment he saw the federal seal on the doors, his blood ran cold. The station fell into uneasy silence as the black SUVs stopped outside. Inside, Captain Jeremy Williams stepped forward, his expression stern. Unlike Mitchell, he was known for being firm but fair, and he sensed that something was deeply wrong. "What's happening here, Sergeant?" he asked sharply. Mitchell straightened his shoulders, forcing a grin. "Nothing serious, Captain. Just a woman from Birmingham who got smart with us. We're teaching her some respect." Williams frowned. "Teaching respect," he repeated. "What are the charges?" Mitchell hesitated for the first time. Speeding, no seatbelt, resisting arrest." The captain narrowed his eyes. "She's been here all night for traffic violations?" The silence was heavy. From inside the cell, Raina heard everything. Her calm remained unshaken. William stepped closer to the bars and looked at her. "Ma'am, what's your name?" Raina met his gaze, but again said nothing. Her silence spoke louder than any title could. And deep down, the captain knew. This was no ordinary woman. Something powerful, something federal, was about to explode in that small, corrupt station. The rumble of engines echoed through the parking lot as the black SUVs came to a stop. The gold emblem of the United States Department of Justice gleamed under the morning sun. Inside the station, whispers spread like wildfire. Federal cars. Who called them? What's going on? Mitchell's smirk vanished. His hands began to sweat. Then, the door swung open, and in walked the U.S. Attorney General himself. "Sergeant Mitchell," he said, his tone sharp and cold, "what operation are you running here?" Mitchell's mouth went dry. "Just regular police work, sir. Routine check." The Attorney General picked up the arrest report on the desk. He read it carefully, his brow furrowing deeper with each line. Finally, he looked up and asked, "Where is the woman you arrested?" Mitchell stammered, In the holding cell, sir." She refused to identify herself. "Take me to her," the Attorney General ordered. When they reached the cell, Raina stood tall, calm, and unafraid. He looked at her for a long moment and asked, "Ma'am, what's your name?" Raina smiled gently. "Judge Raina Washington, Federal Court, Northern District of Alabama." The entire room froze. Every officer's face turned pale. Mitchell stumbled backward, whispering, "No, that's impossible." It was over. The room fell into dead silence. No one dared to breathe as the Attorney General turned, his eyes burning, into Sergeant Mitchell. "You arrested a federal judge," he said slowly, his voice like thunder in a quiet storm. Mitchell's throat tightened. "Sir, I didn't know who she was." "That's the problem," the Attorney General interrupted. "You didn't care who she was." Raina stepped forward, her dignity radiating through the room. "Sergeant Mitchell," she said softly, "I gave you every chance to act with integrity. Every word you said, Every order you gave, I remember it all." Mitchell's knees weakened. The officers behind him shifted uneasily, realizing their careers were now hanging by a thread. Captain Williams spoke up, his tone controlled but firm. "I warned them, sir. Something wasn't right about this arrest." The Attorney General nodded once. "Captain Williams, thank you. From this moment, you are in charge of this precinct." Then, turning to Reyna, he added with respect, "Your Honor, I assure you, justice will be served before this day ends." Reyna looked around the room, the same walls that had witnessed cruelty, fear, and corruption, and whispered, "Let the truth clean what power has corrupted." The fall had begun. Mitchell's face turned ghostly white as two federal agents stepped forward. "Sergeant Devin Mitchell," one of them said, "you are under arrest for civil rights violations, false imprisonment, and abuse of authority." The handcuffs clicked shut, the same kind he'd used to humiliate innocent people. Reyna watched him without hatred, only solemn justice. Mitchell tried one last act of defiance. "Wait, Your Honor," he said, fumbling inside his pocket. "Before you ruin my life completely, look at this." He handed over a folded paper, his retirement request, filed 3 days earlier. He smiled bitterly. "You can't take my pension now. I'm already out." The Attorney General examined the document, then passed it to Captain Williams. "Verify this," he ordered. Williams typed quickly into the system. After a pause, he looked up. "Sir, it's real, but it doesn't go into effect until next week. He's still an active officer." Reyna nodded slowly. "Then justice is still active too." The Attorney General's voice thundered across the room. "Mitchell, your retirement is void, your pension is frozen, and your new address," he looked toward the cells, "will be the same kind of room you once threw others into." For the first time, Mitchell's arrogance collapsed into fear, and the entire station watched as their untouchable leader was led away in chains. As Mitchell was escorted out, he turned desperately to the Attorney General. "Wait," he shouted. "You think I'm the only one? You think this ends with me?" The room froze. Mitchell pointed toward the other officers, his voice trembling but loud. "Half this department has been part of it, falsifying reports, planting evidence, taking bribes for years." Every face turned pale. Whispers filled the air like the hiss of a broken pipe. Captain Williams clenched his jaw, glaring at his men. "Is that true?" he demanded. Silence. Then one of the younger officers lowered his head in shame. "Yes, sir. It's true." The Attorney General exhaled slowly. "This isn't just one man's corruption. It's a disease that spread through your entire system." He turned to Reyna. "Your Honor, this needs to go far beyond Fairfield." Reyna nodded, her eyes filled with determination. "Then we go to the roots. No one involved in this web will escape justice. Not the sheriff, not the prosecutors, not the ones who hid behind silence." She looked around the station one last time. The same walls that once protected criminals in uniform would now become the birthplace of a new era of accountability. Justice had just begun. Within hours, the story hit every major news outlet. CNN, NBC, Fox, all reporting the same headline: "Federal Judge Exposes Systemic Corruption in Alabama Police Department." Outside the station, reporters gathered, cameras flashing. The people of Jefferson County, once silenced by fear, now spoke freely, telling stories of false arrests, intimidation, and years of abuse. Federal agents swarmed the building, carrying out boxes of evidence. 30 police officers, 8 sheriff's deputies, 2 prosecutors, and multiple city officials were placed under arrest before the day was done. Raina watched from a distance, her hands folded. Justice was no longer just a word on paper. It was happening. The Attorney General approached her quietly. "You didn't just clean a precinct," he said. "You changed the course of justice for the entire state." Raina smiled softly. "Justice isn't a position," she said. "It's a responsibility." The sun set over Fairfield, not in shame, but in renewal. A new dawn for a town that had lived too long in the shadows. Weeks later, the courthouse in Birmingham was filled with peace again. Judge Raina Washington had returned to her bench, the same woman, but with a deeper fire in her eyes. On the wall behind her desk hung a framed newspaper headline, "Federal Judge Dismantles Decades of Police Corruption. 30 Officers Arrested." She looked at it often, not out of pride, but as a reminder of what courage costs and what it can create. The wedding she once drove to that day had been postponed, but when it finally happened, the celebration was greater than anyone imagined. It wasn't just about love. It was about freedom, truth, and justice finally shining where darkness had ruled. The people of Jefferson County began to rebuild their faith in the system. They no longer saw police as enemies, but as servants of the people. Because one woman, calm, patient, unshaken, refused to be silenced. And as the video fades, the narrator's voice carries one final truth. Sometimes, the most powerful people are those willing to look powerless to reveal the truth. If this story inspired you, if you believe that courage still matters, like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe for more stories about justice, faith, and the power of doing what's right, even when it costs everything.